I'm Lisa, and this is Randall, and we are Fireside Farm. We're located outside of Durham and Chapel Hill in Orange County, North Carolina, and we have a cut flower operation, and we run a sawmill. And you want to go check out some flowers?
So on the flower side of things, we have an acre in cut flower production. So that includes this area where we're standing, which is 3/4 of an acre, and a mix of annuals and perennials. And also we have 5 different tunnels, 50 feet, that are either being built or in production. Out here we have a no-till system where we have 29 150-foot rows, 30 inches on center. We use mostly black landscape fabric out here with pre-burned holes, and then every winter we'll take the plastic off and then plant a cover crop. On the perennial side of things, we have 1/4 of an acre in perennials, and so that's kind of all the space that we're working with.
Okay, and where do you guys mostly sell to?
We sell to a lot of local florists, and when COVID hit, we really built up relationships with some of those local businesses because the global supply chain was really thrown off, especially flowers coming from Central America. So a lot of local businesses pivoted to supporting local farms almost completely. And so we're really grateful that a lot of those relationships have continued. And so we sell to local florists. We also design for a lot of weddings every year, and so we actually plant with the intention of using these specific colors, textures, varieties, and also plan our succession, all of our succession crops, so that we have what we need for weddings that begin in sometimes as early as late February and go all the way until early November. So right now it's mostly just local florists and for weddings. And also a lot of people just who know about us will come out and buy buckets. We sell off of our website online, and people who know that we're out here will just tell us what they're looking for and come out and pick it up.
So I see a lot of different things out here. What are some stuff that you kind of specialize in, or is it kind of all of the above?
It's funny, when we started growing flowers, we were growing a lot of annuals. We had a lot of sunflowers, we had a lot of zinnias, a lot of celosia, a lot of gomphrena, and the really sort of things that were a little bit easier to grow. And as we have grown more confident, we've been trying to grow things that to me feel like a little more 2.0. This was our first year growing ranunculus with great success, and that was because of the tunnels. We're also growing a lot of dahlias, which are my other favorite, and they are a labor of love. They take a lot of work. They're quite an investment, but in my mind they're worth it. So right now it's a combination of a lot of things. We also grow herbs that work well for design. We have a lot of ornamental grasses, and I'm really interested in texture for my designs, and so anything that has like a freaky seed pod or anything that looks almost better after the petals have fallen off, I collect those. I dry a lot of flowers to work with in the winter, so we try to grow a lot of the freaky stuff that other people aren't growing. Also because I like to be able to walk out here and just pick things as I'm either making a bridal bouquet or putting something together for an event.
All right, so you guys have quite a few tunnels here. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that with the operation here and growing certain kinds of flowers?
Yes, ranunculus. Ranunculus are one of my favorite kinds of flowers to grow, and this last year was our first time ever growing them in a tunnel, and it was really a game changer for us just because we were able to start them last fall. They require a lot of time in the ground, and they like to winter over, and so the tunnels are ideal because we can monitor irrigation, and we can also, if it gets really cold, if it gets below 32, we can put frost blanket on them. But they start blooming when we're still in danger of frost. So they'll start blooming in ideally mid to late February, and they last until Mother's Day. So they're really cool flowers, and growing them in the field is really, really challenging just because we have such variable temperature now. It's hard to control. We also have been experimenting with other flowers like Lisianthus and anemone, and a lot of seeds that probably wouldn't start in the field during the summer we can grow in these tunnels because we can put shade cloth on top of them, and that's made a big difference. Just because we want to have things growing all the time, our goal is to have a flower in every single hole out here, really from February until the first frost in October or November, and the tunnels have changed everything.
Okay, and one thing I always think about with tunnels is protection from the rain. Is that a big part of it as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think because we specialize in wedding flowers, really the shoulder seasons are our most profitable times, and those are often times that have either hurricanes in October or will have a really wet winter, and so the tunnels protect us both from those things. And like Lisa was saying, we've often had trouble getting seeds to start in like that July period when it's just the soil is too hot. So we're able to throw frost blanket over top of these tunnels and use our misters. Yeah, it's been a game changer for us.
Okay, kind of an insurance policy as well with the hurricanes.
Yes,
and
right.
You got some pretty beefy tunnels, so
right. Yeah, we over-engineered them for sure. I mean, they're the foundations are in concrete, and we have trenches all around them, and it's pretty beefy steel. And we built, solid end walls with lumber that we milled here on the property.
Lisa, can you talk a little bit about how you learned how to design and sort of some of the influences and how that went about for you?
Yes, I am not a classically trained florist. I am really completely self-taught, and that's just because I've been cutting flowers in my parents' garden and now my own garden for most of my life. And so I initially, when I became fascinated with floral design, I did a lot of reading and a lot of online tutorials, and I found mentors both virtually and locally that totally inspired me. Morgan Moylan from West Queen Studio is kind of a floral design genius, and she's shown me a lot of tricks of the trade. She's been really generous with her knowledge. And also there's a woman named Susan McLeary who goes by Passion Flower Sue online, and she is totally visionary when it comes to wearables, which I'm really interested in learning more about and have been experimenting with a lot this year. I've always been fascinated with texture and pods, as I was mentioning before. So, I like making things that are small, that are wearable, but also I like making really gorgeous bouquets. And so when I started growing dahlias, this is one of this year's dahlias, there are so many colors out there, and there's so many colors in all of these varieties. It's been hard to hone it, but I'm kind of learning what I love to design with. I know what my favorite color palettes are, and I know what local designers like to use. And so I'm growing for designers. I'm growing for myself out here. And I'm trying to always, when I buy seeds or corms or tubers, I'm always thinking about when they're going to bloom and what kind of designs I'll be using them in. And so it's kind of, it's pretty magical to be able to walk outside and just create from something that you just picked. And so I'm learning as I go, but there are tremendous resources out there. And so you don't have to fly to London. You don't have to, go to really expensive workshops. I would love to do that, and I hope to do that at some point. But right now I'm learning from this. I am learning from what's growing right around me and working primarily just with seasonal flowers and things that grow in North Carolina in Zone 7B.
All right, so over here in what you're calling it the flower barn, can you talk a little bit about this space and how it works?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically our packing shed, but this is our 2.0 version. When we first started, we were packing up at the house, and we have our cooler still up there, but the challenge we had was that when people would come and pick up flowers, they were literally coming to our front door. The dogs are barking, running underneath their cars, getting in the way. We're having to clean up the previous night's mess, and so we're feeling like ultimately embarrassed to have anyone over. So when we did this packing shed, we wanted it away from the house with a gate that could close. We wanted plenty of space, and so florists could come here, pick up their flowers, even shop the cooler, and us not really having to worry about them in our space. It gives us kind of a work-life balance too, because our house is over there and our farm is over here. And just functionally, we built these big tables out of wood that I had milled from wood on our property.
And it's a shady space outside to work during the day because we are south-facing and we're getting direct sun, so it's really nice to have a space. We get the flowers out of the field, quickly into buckets and hydrated, and then boom, into our cooler, which we keep at between, I don't know, right now it's at about 45 degrees. And so we try to, really get things out of the ground and into the cooler quickly because that will increase their vase life. And also we want to sell things that are super fresh.
So location-wise, it's great. It's right in the center of the farm, right next to the beds here, and also very accessible from the driveway. So I think it works really well. All right, Lisa, let's go take a look inside the magical cooler here.
Yes, it's very, 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 very full right now. And all right, yeah, it is. We are right here at the end of June, and it is rutabaga season. We have so many snapdragons. Gladiolas just started, which I'm pretty excited about. Dahlias, we have the end of campanula, and I think I was talking earlier also just about my love of all things strange and pod-like. These hydrangeas are new this year, but we have these, they're nigella pods, and, check that out. In design work, you're always looking for something that will draw the eye, and when I see something like this that kind of looks like, an alien gave birth to it, it's like that in the middle of a bouquet. Anything that gives added texture or surprises people is really exciting. We grow a lot of status. We have the end of the phlox, and also these really cool drumstick allium pods, just the end of these, but they're like scepters. And it's the beginning of sunflower season, so lots of those. In a month, this cooler will look totally different because we'll have different varieties in here, but right now it's the start of dahlia season and the end of bells of Ireland. A lot of the cool flowers are just about finished, the orlia, but we're moving into summer, and as you can see, there's a lot going on.
That's one thing that's important for people to realize about local flower farms is that they're going to change throughout the season.
Yeah, sometimes every week is different around here, and that's why I really appreciate local florists who source almost solely from farms. Is because they're selling what is growing here now and not what's growing in Ecuador or Colombia. We don't grow roses here because they require a lot of chemicals to keep them bug-free and flourishing. So, there are no roses here. But, we do have zinnias, which have just started, and, they're pretty amazing flowers, and hopefully they'll last until mid-October. We have all we need here, so there's no reason to ship it from halfway across the planet. That's how I feel about it.
All right, so this is another one of your plots. This is the perennial garden.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what's going on in this area?
Yeah, for sure. So in our perennial garden, we wanted to do something we wanted plants that would satisfy three conditions: the ones that love partial shade, the ones that are good for bouquet making, and then also ones that we could leave in flower for local pollinators. And so that's these flowers. So we have like a still bee and columbine and ferns and heliobore. And also this was a spot that was heavily sloped, and so we needed something that would stay put to kind of keep erosion down.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff in here for sure. It looks very different from the other plot. Can you take a minute to talk about the name of your farm and some of the background there?
Yeah, we are Fireside Farm, and we named the farm when we were both teaching at a Quaker school in Durham, Carolina Friends School, and we were thinking a lot about community, and we had a really amazing, robust community there, and spent a lot of time sitting around tables, sometimes in silence and sometimes in really deep conversation. And that school really inspired us because it was so focused on social justice and environmental stewardship, and we were really moved by our time there. And so when we built this farm, we had a vision for it as being a space where we could bring people together. We were really excited about building local community here. And at the time, Randall was still building tables, and we had this vision of a big front porch with a massive farm table and gatherings with people around it and deep conversation. And so there was something about being around a fire or a table or in a garden working on something together that was really inspiring. And so we landed on Fireside.
Cool. And obviously the other part of your business is the sawmill and all of that. So let's go take a look at that and learn some things that you have going on with that.
Okay. So within Fireside Farm, there's the flower operation and then the sawmill operation. And then the sawmill operation has the portable sawmill services. I also sell rough cut lumber. And on occasion, I'll build tables out of the lumber that I mill. The portable sawmill operation, I have a mill that I bring out to places within 25 miles of my farm and mill lumber for other people on their sites. On the lumber side of things, I sell mostly dimensional pine, and so folks who want a 2x6x16 can call me for a barn project or something. And then the custom tables is something that I've done for the last 3 years, and that's taking lumber either from someone's property and using it for a table for them, or taking lumber that I've milled and make somebody a big conference room table size.
All right, so how'd you get into this, Randall?
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I started my life as a child actor in Charlotte, so this is pretty far, I think, professionally from where I started. I think that the trajectory for me started when I started homesteading, and we had about 3 acres that I wanted not to clear cut, but just to select cut, so I could leave the deciduous trees and clear out a lot of the pines, and no small logger would take on that project. They wouldn't let me help succession along. They just wanted to cut everything down. So I had a neighbor come over and look at the logs with me and the trees, and he's like, you could do this on a small mill, or I could sell you my old one and you could do this yourself. And so I bought a used sawmill from my neighbor in order to get lumber for my own projects. At that point, people started bullying me to mill their lumber. And so it was at that point that I realized that I could actually make money at it. And so as a full-time teacher, I was working as a part-time sawyer on the weekend.
All right, so we're going to go through and show some of the equipment and talk about some of the business practices.
Yeah, so this is my sawmill, and I think it's important to note that within the world of sawmills, there's anything from the $300 clamp-on bar system that you can put on your chainsaw to a $100,000 sawmill. And all of them are processing lumber for you to use. This is kind of like right in the middle of that, and it's a Wood-Mizer LT40. It's a portable mill that can take logs up to 20 feet long, 36 inch in diameter, and are around 4,000 pounds. And the way that it works is, as long as I can get the log to these loader arms here, you can kind of take a look. The loader arms then are able to lift the log onto this bed, and then the log stops up against this. And so you can kind of imagine, like, let's just say that this is our log here. And then on this end, this whole apparatus includes a very sharp blade and the ability to rise and lower. And so what this does is that this then moves forward through the log. like that. And so once you make a cut, it backs up, and you can make another cut.
Okay, so I think there's probably some either misconceptions or ideas about the safety. Can you talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of the first sawmills were circular saws, and so they were big, unshielded blades that people were reaching into or around. And so I think that's why, you have, there's a Robert Frost poem about kids getting destroyed by, getting injured by these big mills. But on these, they're relatively safe because there's so much metal around you and where the blade is actually meeting the log. And so that's why I feel it's pretty safe to be able to take this out to a client's house or farm and go ahead and mill on that premises.
Randall, I'd love you to talk a little bit about the lumber industry in terms of pricing, especially because people are aware right now that lumber is very expensive, but also in terms of, local lumber is not really common.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, right now a lot of the lumber that you buy from the hardwood store is being shipped in from the Pacific Northwest and clear cuts up there, and also in southern pine plantations of monocrops down in the southeast. And so people are used to getting lumber that's imported, and the prices traditionally have been very depressed. And people are used to paying $4 for a 2x4. In that context, it was really hard for local small sawmills to kind of keep up with that kind of price point, given the expense of the equipment. Of course, now we're seeing that flip. One of the things that has been the biggest impediment to local lumber has been the rules related to building. For home building, approved construction, most of the time you need that lumber stamped. And that lumber stamp is associated with a company, not an individual, and not a service. And so what that means is basically you've created conditions for a monopoly, for a lumber, for some type of major $1 million or like a million board foot production to be producing that lumber and get the stamp and then able to sell it to consumers. I can't afford that as a small-time sawyer. But as you mentioned, right now lumber prices are through the roof. The obvious explanation is that's because of low interest rates, high demand for building, post-COVID, but that's actually not what's going on. What's going on right now is price gouging from the national lumber industry and also the hardware stores.
So it's a fake price.
Right. It's that classic condition where they're quadrupling prices to shock you so that when they actually double the prices in the long run, you'll feel relief.
So why do you think that's happening right now with the current climate?
Because there's no alternative. Because the local lumber market and the sawmills are so anemic and haven't been able to get up to scale, and people are used to a low price point, that we haven't been able to compete.
Okay, so I can't buy lumber from you to build a house,
That's
essentially.
right. That's right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And you could go to the hardware store and get B-grade wood and build your house, and come to me and get A-grade wood, but you couldn't use it.
Okay, so what do we need to do to change that legislation, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that fortunately, at least in North Carolina, you can use lumber off of your own property to build your house. There's some criteria that you can look on my website to see how that works. But for most people who don't have timber stands on their property, you can't go to the local sawmill, buy your lumber, and build your house. There's a bill right now in the North Carolina legislature that would allow sawmills like me to sell to home builders and farmers so that they could use my lumber in approved construction.
So I had some trees cleared at my property, and they hauled them away, and they were bringing them to a local lumber yard, and I thought, like, man, there's some really good straight trees here. It'd be great for lumber. And the guys told me, like, no, we don't really get that much for this. Why is that? What's going on there?
There are a couple of things, and I get that call all the time. So basically, logs are bought per ton, and so the going rate right now is between $25 and $60 per ton. So any of these, like this, is probably maybe 800 pounds, and so you might get $20 at the mill for that. And that's shocking because when you actually look at the amount of lumber that you can produce in this, let's say that we would be able to get 5 2x10s, and you know that the 2x10s at your local hardware store are going to cost, let's say, $30 a piece. You know that you have $150 in value in this log that then you're selling down the road for whatever, $15 or $20. And so part of the problem is that there's such an abundant supply of logs right now that the prices are depressed. The log prices have remained pretty much consistent since the mid-90s, excluding some kind of furniture grade woods like cherry and things like that. But the more important part of this is not just the surplus, it's the fact that somebody down the line is price gouging and making that much money off of the logs. And it's not the loggers, the sawmills, the kiln dryers, the haulers, the arborists. That money usually is being that's going to the corporations that are brokering the whole deal.
Okay, so is this an opportunity for small-scale local people to make some good money? I mean, there's a lot of cheap wood out there, it sounds like.
Yes, yeah, there is, but as we were talking about, there's the regulatory aspect that prevents me from monetizing anything.
So you have to sell to different kinds of outlets.
Right, and so farming is one classic kind of consumer base, right, where you're not subject to the same inspection criteria. So farmers are a good market, but really with this legislation, we're hoping to open up to more home buyers.
All right, so we're gonna go run the sawmill, but
Yeah.
obviously you can't talk while it's running.
Yeah.
All right, cool, let's go check that out.
Okay. So with that one log, which was, I think, 20 inches in diameter, 12-foot long pine log, at the lumber yard, you would have been able to sell that for maybe $25. We were able to generate 12 2x8x12s and 4 1x12x12s. And so the dollar equivalent of that is around $320. And it took us about 25 minutes to process that log. And so that's why there's a real value proposition here for people to hire portable sawyers, especially young farmers who are looking to build homes, is that we can take lumber from people's property, and if we're approved to put it into home construction, we could actually start to talk about affordable housing and actually start to talk about ways that farmers can build their own homes and not go into debt. I mean, that's key. Like, this is a way that we can really build wealth.
I think on top of that, the environmental impact, we're not shipping wood across the world.
Right. It's not going to the dump and going into the landfill and becoming methane gas to contribute to climate change. This is carbon sequestration at its best.
So you've made the transition from teaching to running a farm, growing flowers, and running a sawmill. So what was the main reason behind that, and how are you feeling about that now?
It's a good question. We for a long time at Friend School, I was teaching a class called Quaker Advocacy, where I was teaching students consensus process and also lobbying. And a lot of the times we were lobbying on the topic of climate disruption. And I realized when I was teaching this class that I felt like a hypocrite, that I was telling students what the problem was, but wasn't really giving them many alternatives or solutions. And I felt like I needed to offer up my own life as an example in service to addressing the main causes of climate disruption. And I feel like in doing, in starting a farm, I at least was starting on that path of showing them what resiliency and resourcefulness looks like. And in that work, I realized that what I was really trying to teach, and am trying to teach now, is this sense of abundance. Because, in a world that feels like scarcity is the norm, being rooted in the agrarian, being rooted in a place where there's ample lumber for all of our homes and ample flowers for all of us to enjoy, that having our movement rooted in that is a spiritually grounded work. And so I feel like it's just kind of part of my teaching, but just in a different context.
Yeah, for me, farming seemed like a really logical segue from teaching. I don't know, middle school teaching for me was, it was all about managing chaos, There were so many unknowns every single day. When you woke up, it was kind of like triage. And working with adolescents is not that different from farming. It's sort of just like you wake up and you address the crisis du jour and you tend to things that need a lot of attention and care and listening and watching. And so For me, farming feels like a very logical extension from teaching. Plus, we're lucky that we're still in community with so many of our former colleagues and our former students. And so, and for me, flowers too. Flowers have been, it's been such an exciting process to shift from vegetables to flowers, because for me, they're truly the most tangible distillation of joy that I've ever experienced, and they make people so happy. And especially during COVID, it really kept me sane to be able to grow things and deliver things to people with my mask on safely to their porches that would make them literally cry. They were so happy. And to write those little love notes from a mom to a daughter, people who hadn't seen each other in months, and drive from house to house delivering bouquets. It was like, it was healing me during a really tough time. And I'm hooked for life. Flower farming is not anything I ever would have anticipated, but it makes so much sense now.
Well, you guys got a beautiful thing going on here. I will leave links down below for your website and all the social media and everything else. And I really appreciate you sharing your story with everyone, and wish you guys the best of luck.
Thanks.
Thanks.